In this video I will talk about the 5 most common beginner landscape photography questions, why these are wrong questions to ask and which question you should be asking instead. Hi, I'm Kim from Landscape to Art and I'm here to help you improve your landscape photography, focusing on developing your skills as a photographer and less on the gear you use. And if this is your first timer, make sure you click the subscribe button below. When you start to learn something new, you soon realize that you don't have all the answers, so you start to ask questions. And our brain is wired in such a way that we tend to ask questions that we already supposedly know, and we just want someone to confirm that what we already know. The questions you ask as a beginner are based on your current level of knowledge, and at this stage you don't even know yet what you don't know. And because of this, it often leads you to ask the wrong questions. And let's get started and look at the most common beginner questions and why these might not be the best questions to ask when you're starting out. Typically, the first question you ask is, where is the best place to learn photography? And it's a broad question which is very difficult, if not impossible, to answer in a meaningful way. Therefore, a typical answer to this question is go to YouTube. There are a lot of great tutorials there. For someone just starting out, this is probably not a very helpful answer because, as you know, YouTube is a huge source of information. And so the best place to learn photography also depends on many other things. What level you're at and what do you want to learn? Is it the basic or any specific topics you're looking for? And there are loads of experts and websites you can go to learn photography. And the problem is actually where there is way too much information available. And if you try to keep up with everything and jump from source to source, you can end up spending all your time just consuming endless amounts of information. And you never have the time to practice photography, which is the most important. So the best you can do is to select a couple of websites or teachers that appeal to you and stick with them. Photography is not science, so everyone online basically teach the same things. The difference is how they teach it, their personality and teaching style. So when you ask where the best place to learn photography is, you will get a lot of tips from other photographers that have already learned from that favorite source or photographer. But this source might not be the right one for your style of learning. And some people prefer to learn from videos while others prefer to read books and articles. So just by narrowing your question down and mention, I prefer videos over reading, you have already asked a better question, and it's much easier to come up with a better answer to the question. Unless you have all the time in the world, a better choice is to take a photography course. And with a course, the information is structured and you will be guided through the whole process one step at a time. A well-crafted course focuses on the most important things and remove all the fluff and unnecessary stuff that are typically included in many courses. So spending your money on a beginner photography course is a much better investment than spending the money on a new camera or a new lens. The second question that is asked a lot is about buying a new camera. And when you're new to photography, it's easy to think that the camera is the most important and that you first need a new and better camera before you get started. So the most obvious is to post a question on Facebook and ask, which camera should I buy? Or which is the best DSLR for beginners? I recently saw a similar question posted in a photography group on Facebook. It was asked, which camera do you recommend? I want to go outdoors and take pictures. And these questions received more than 90 answers. So obviously a very popular question to engage with. And I counted more than 20 different suggestions on camera models before I gave up counting. I like to think there are no wrong or stupid questions, but it's always possible to ask better and more precise questions. Most of the answers in this Facebook thread was short and 1 or 2 word answers about the camera model and the brand. And very few answers took into consideration or asked about the need of the person that asked the question. And most answer was people mentioning the camera they use, of course, and the best camera for them. But for the person that asked the question, these these answers probably did not bring any clarity for him at all. Most people asking questions about which camera to buy, they already have a camera. They just believe that the camera they have is not good enough. They believe that a new and better camera will be the key to better photos. But the fact is, not everyone with a DSLR or mirrorless camera can take good photos. And many photographers take great photos just with their iPhones or smartphones. Some photographers even experience they took better photos with their smartphones than they do after they bought a DSLR camera. And the reason is that tech gets in the way. There are too many buttons and menus to concern about. For the average photographer, a more expensive camera doesn't equal better images. So therefore, good photos cannot only be attributed to the camera. So what should be a better question to ask then? Because I don't believe any camera will ever make you a better photographer, I would just say don't ask this question at all, not yet. Use the camera you have and focus on how it works and practice as much as you can using it. Save your money until you know that the camera is actually limiting you in some way. And with limitations, I don't mean you're not taking good photos, because that's on you. All cameras on the market now are good enough for any type of landscape photography. Even if you have a camera that's a few years old, it won't make much difference if you buy a new. It's only when you experience constraints with your current camera gear that you know exactly and specifically what to ask for. And with better and more precise questions, you will also get better and more relevant answers. The third answer that can be asked better is about lenses. A typical question is, which is the best lens for my Nikon camera, or which is the best lens for landscape photography? These are typically questions that are asked a lot. And it's the same as with the camera. These questions are also too broad and too unspecific to answer, because there are no best lenses for any camera or any genre of photography. Which lens is the best for you depends on what you're photographing, and many landscape photographers prefer shooting with wide-angle lenses. This doesn't mean wide-angle lenses are the best for landscape photography. Telephoto lenses can also be excellent choices when you shoot landscapes. And in fact, landscape photographers should know how to use both a wide angle and a telephoto lens. But with lenses, unlike the camera, a new and better lens will actually have an impact on the quality of your photos. With quality, I mean sharper photos. But you can easily take sharp photos that are otherwise bad with an expensive lens. And you can take a well-composed photo that might not be as sharp as with a more expensive lens. If you must pixel peep to notice the difference between lenses, what's the point? Is it worth spending a lot of extra money on a lens with top specifications when you and most other photographers cannot even tell the difference from a similar and significantly cheaper lens? Before you fully understand how to use lenses to create well-composed photos, you should not be too concerned about getting the sharpest and best possible lens. But with that said, if you have money to spend on gear, I recommend you spend the money on a new lens rather than a new camera. You're much more likely to notice the difference if you upgrade your kit lens to a better quality lens. However, you should be aware that the improvement only goes so far, and at some point the difference in quality is so small that it really doesn't matter, and it doesn't justify the extra cost anymore. And at this point you start paying for status. So what are better questions to ask about lenses? Try to focus your questions on the why. Ask why a particular lens you're considering might be a better option for a particular use case. You should specify as much as you can about what your photography interests are and what you are planning to photograph. Landscape photography, for example, it's a huge broad term. Do you photograph at night, or do you do mostly daytime shooting? Because night photography, for example, requires lenses that can handle low light, and that typically are more expensive lenses. If you hike or travel a lot, weight and size might be more important than how sharp the lens is. The sharpest and highest quality lenses are often very heavy and bulky lenses. The fourth question that is asked a lot by beginner landscape photographers is, which is the best camera setting for landscape photography? And Again, the most obvious and realistic answer to this question is it depends. The reason so many beginners ask this question is because they believe that the magic happens in the camera. If it was that easy, why doesn't everyone with a fancy camera take great pictures? Unfortunately, there is no single camera setting that works for every situation. Instead, there are combinations of settings that give you the different results you're looking after. This is why photos taken by different photographers at the same location at the same time can look totally different. The most creative photographers always find new and different angles and compositions. I have created another video where I specifically walk you through the most common camera settings and how to use them in different situations. And you can find the video up on the corner here. A better question to ask is, what setting did you use to make the water look like cotton, for example? And which setting did you use to make the background blurred? What was your thought process behind this image? Asking questions this way is also a much better way to learn. You see something another photographer have shot and you get curious and you ask why and you try to do it yourself. The fifth commonly asked questions is related to editing software. When a photographer is ready to learn post-processing, he must get an editing software, of course. So the obvious question is, which is the best software for editing? Again, a very broad question with no simple answer. As with cameras and lenses, there is no software that is better than any of the others. And at least not for everyone. The software is just a tool like the camera is. And you don't take better or worse photos if you're using a Nikon or a Sony camera. And you don't take any better photos if you're using a DSLR or a mirrorless camera. Similarly, you don't edit better photos if you use Photoshop instead of Lightroom or Luminar instead of Affinity Photo. It's not the software that creates greater images. Every editing software basically have exactly the same features that you need to post-process. The buttons and sliders might have different names and the menus organized slightly different. So the question you should ask instead is not so much about the software, but how you can learn post-processing the most effective way. It is totally possible to learn all the buttons and sliders in any software, in and out, and still not understand how you can post-process natural-looking landscape photos. What you must learn instead is the basics of post-processing. What makes an image good or bad? What can you improve in the image? What can you not improve in an image when you edit? Again, it's all about you and your skills. When you know how to take good photos, you can use any camera. And when you know how to post-process, you can use any software. I hope these tips at least help you understand that photography is more about you than it's about your camera and software. When you realize this, you can ask better questions and get better answers in return. If you're always searching for the best camera, the best lens and the best whatever in photography, you will spend the rest of your life researching instead of learning photography. So find the tools that works for you and don't look too much at what advertisers and other photographers tell you that you need to buy. Trust yourself. You don't have anything to prove for anyone else but you. So now if you like this video, consider giving it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And thank you so much for watching, and as usual, if you have any comments and questions, post them in the comment section below. Until next time, ha det bra, goodbye.